Welcome to The Match. Meet the minds behind the work. Insights from the best specialist and independent agencies presented by Studio Space. So I'm excited to be joined by Shruti Rai today on The Match. Shruti is strategy partner at GHO, which is an independent design, experience and strategy consultancy. Shruti, thanks so much for joining us. Kick things off, maybe tell us a little bit more about GHO and the work that you do.
Right. So we have been proudly independent for 25 plus years. We've had the pleasure of working with the big end of town businesses such as CommBank, Allianz, right up to early stage startups. It says on our toes. Our motto is good humans only. And we believe there's always a better way of doing things. So we're always looking at how can we take our offerings and our partnership with our clients further through design and creativity.
Fantastic. And I know you yourself, you trained as a designer,
Yeah.
your background, but we're talking about strategy. How does your background as a designer lead you to think differently about strategy?
I always joke that my career has been a path of pivots. I trained as a visual designer, but I was always just a very curious, nosy person. So I would always find myself in rooms where some of the decisions and the thinking was being made. And I've had the pleasure of working with some really smart strategists and the really good thinkers through my life in agency land. And through that craft, I've kind of found myself in strategy land. But I think what's always been, I want to say my little secret weapon is because of my design background, I feel the need to take language and all the words that are being talked about and kind of simplify it into something more visual. And, we're humans. Our brains are very visual. We learn and understand through storytelling. And so I think a lot of my design background kind of translates pretty well into simplifying complex ideas into something that's a simple story.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure is something you're going to build on through our discussion. I know you want to talk about dead fish. I wasn't sure where you were going with this when you told me you wanted to talk about dead fish, but I think you're onto something. So you've said the strategy deck, which is kind of the main artifact, the thing that our industry sells, is actually the problem in terms of strategy not always landing inside organizations or being adopted or being taken forward. So tell us more about the dead fish problem.
Okay, so in terms of the way that when we think strategy, we think 90-page, 200-page PowerPoint presentations with some of the smartest thinking. As a designer, I used to always kind of go, oh my God, this is amazing. But then as someone who has then been handed this document and then asked to make sense of it and, start to build something from that, there was always a disconnect. Now, it's a problem because we're here in 2026 and we're still just buying strategy as decks and PowerPoint presentations. And there must be an evolution. So if you think about from a dead fish perspective, okay, if I ask you, Robin, draw me a fish, what do you do?
You want me to draw one?
Yeah.
Now? Yeah. Okay. See my terrible drawing here.
I'm going to get your kids to judge this.
They'll laugh.
Now, that is an interesting species. Duckling would be very proud of you. But if you look at that, that's essentially a dead fish. A fish is not supposed to be static.
Dead, yeah.
Pretty much. We tend to the reason why we draw our fishes like that is because it's the medium. It's the paper, right? Paper only allows us to do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, if you think about strategy and the reason why we kind of have these 200-page documents is because we think about how we're going to how are we going to communicate these ideas through a PowerPoint? So a fish is supposed to be alive. It's supposed to be mobile. It's supposed to move. It has, it's reactive. It has water. It's dynamic. And when we went from paper to computer, we could actually animate the fish. We could kind of, we as designers, I know I did. I learned, back then it was Flash. We used to write action scripts and we could kind of make things bounce and move. And we started thinking about the medium differently, and that dictated how we executed some of that. Now, if you apply the same thing to strategy, basically our 90-page documents are very expensive artwork because they're beautiful. They're smart. They're good to look at, but are they alive?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, dare I say, I still do have a lot of our research being presented in documents, and there is a role for it, but it has to go beyond that. Like, when does that fish come alive and start to be mobile and dynamic through? So when you think about how the amount and the richness of the information that goes into those strategy documents, we're speaking to businesses, we're speaking to the stakeholders, we're speaking to customers, we're doing market research. All of that then boils down to 10 flat pages. All of that richness then boils down to one dead fish. So if you're kind of thinking about how do we actually make sure that all the dynamism and the movement and the richness of the information that we're bringing into creating that strategy, how does that go on to live better for your clients as well? That was kind of the initial thesis on why we started GHO Collabs. So we're a bunch of thinkers and makers at GHO. Most of our strategists used to be designers in the past, or designers who have much more of a strategic lens as well. So the way that we thought was, instead of that 200-page document of just giving you the strategy, we would actually we do some initial research. We'll then work with the clients. We cast key people from the team. We co-create with them, prototype, test, and what would have otherwise been just a dead fish strategy deck is now a working prototype, tested, brought to life, and a business case.
Yeah, it's got real momentum and ownership.
That's right.
Behind it as well.
That's right. And it's actually quite imperative in today's time, because gone are the days where you had the luxury of, we're going to go away for 6 months and do intense, deep research work. I'm going to come back and then present it to you and tell you exactly what you should do in the next 2 horizons. I don't think many businesses have that luxury to wait and marinate in that strategy thinking to then execute and bolster on any solutions. So, I think we need to rethink the way strategy as a function works to be able to keep up with the moving landscape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So developing strategy which is alive.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think where dead fish as a concept comes from, as in my old avatar as a designer, I came across, I think it was 10 years back. There's a video, and anyone who sees this should go check it out. Is by this guy called Brett Victor. And he was actually trying to show people how to build animation on computers. And he talked about how we should be thinking about not the medium shouldn't dictate the output, aka paper shouldn't be the reason why we design dead fish. We should be thinking about how computer as a medium is an art medium. So it allows us to draw and move and make the fish alive. But don't forget that the person interacting with it is also alive. So how do you orchestrate a performance between 2 live creatures?
Yep.
So if you take that from a strategic point of view, what is the what's the right way to bring the strategy to life that the other live humans, such as your clients and their teams, can then interact with it in a way that they can sort of make those clearer decisions at speed, at value as well.
So once you've experienced this way of working, I'm sure it's pretty hard to go back to, maybe the more traditional approach of developing static,
Yep.
dead fish strategy. How do you make the case though, within an organization for working this way? Maybe one way to look at it is what's the cost of not working this way and developing, dead fish strategy?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're not going to rip the Band-Aid overnight. It's a bit of a learning curve. The way that now we've been working like this, we've conducted 50 plus collabs across our clients like CommBank and Allianz, and what used to be a bit of a sell. Now they're kind of reaching out to us, going, "Hey, can we do a collab for this?" The more ambiguous it is, the more faster you need clarity, and the faster you need alignment with all your team members. That's where you need to sort of make strategy move faster as well. So in terms of why you should be thinking about strategy that needs to be alive, the pace at which businesses are changing is much more dynamic and more faster than it was back then. If you think about what businesses used to do before, you'd find something you're doing really well, there's a market for it, then you optimize, you scale, Sigma 6, all of those things that used to be the playbook. The playbook doesn't exist like that. And that doesn't matter if you're a huge, multi-complex organization or an early stage startup. You have to move really fast, and you're building a team of smart decision makers. So you need something that you have that can be executable. You need something that has behavior baked into it, and you need to have something that's dynamic, that can change based on changes that are happening within or outside your organization. So look, I think there's the reason why we usually we still have this deep research sometimes in certain organizations, like say governments, where there needs to be a lot more rigor that you have to show for every decision and every hypothesis you're putting forward. There is a case for that. Take your time and get that details in. But for many cases, you're more better off looking for a live strategy that brings the hypothesis to life faster, quicker, and in a much more tangible way, rather than, when you're showing your stakeholder or your decision maker, this is what the hypothesis was, this is what we built or prototyped, and this is how our customers reacted to it. Very hard one to say no to, because you've validated value, viability, and feasibility within a short span of time.
Yeah, and you've got momentum.
That's right.
There's a movement happening in the organization to take this forward.
That's right.
Hey, let's talk about some examples. I know you've taken the collabs approach with some of Australia's biggest companies. Have you got maybe an example or two that you could talk to around how you've taken this approach? And
the interesting thing is there's an assumption sometimes that when we hear, but I'm not sure if this is the right problem to solve with a collab. The reality is we've addressed much more brand level questions, such as how might we be relevant to the youth of today? To, hey, we've got a conversion funnel problem. To, we think that we've got this new pillar within the business. How do we bring that to life through a new service as well? So, for example, and you talked about momentum, for example, and it's really interesting. One of the key features for us from a collab perspective is to co-create with our clients' teams. And what that creates is a ripple effect within the business. So it just doesn't give momentum into the project at hand, but the people who are involved in helping you build that then take something away from there as well. So one of the examples that come to mind is we did a collab with CommBank's retail team. I think, that was a few years back. And like I said, the question was, how might we be relevant to the youth? They were losing the halo effect of the audiences that grew up with the CommBank Dolomite program. And you had younger audiences who had never heard of it, didn't have, they saw CommBank as something that mum and dad had. They wanted something fun and more relevant for them as well, as they were learning about money. And so we went through the collab process, again, did initial research, got the right cast in, co-created multiple solutions, brought it to life with our designers into a prototype, and then tested it with, young customers. And the feedback from that was so interesting and so valuable. And it wasn't just saying we need to build XY features or this is the percentage of customers we can grow. You suddenly saw what is value for your customers pretty quickly. Because when you ask them, it's, they'll tell you, I want an app. But yeah, you have an app. So what's the problem? It's about how they thought of money, how you help them learn the fundamentals of money at the start. So a lot of the prototype that we sort of built in that collab, suddenly when the product team that was involved in the process as well were going, oh, that should be on our roadmap. And then what came out of that was a feature that got released into the app within the next few months. So it accelerated the feature roadmap for another team, whereas the marketing team kind of found what's the value proposition to go to market with as well. So an alive strategy should be something that everyone around the table should be able to take from as well, not just the team that has commissioned the work as well.
Uh-huh. Very different from the static,
that's
long
right,
strategy deck that
exactly
lives on a shelf somewhere.
Like I said, it's very expensive art, very, very expensive art.
Thanks, Shruti. That was a great example for how you build clarity, conviction, momentum around a new customer proposition or a new product. Love that example. What about if you're looking to develop a new strategy for where a whole business is going? What the future vision for that company looks like. Can you take this approach as well?
I mean, that would build an even more stronger case for the opposite of dead fish strategy, because what comes to mind is, for example, one of our clients, SG Fleet, they're a fleet services company. They had built a business strategy. Their ambition was to become the new way of mobility services. So they had to make the leap from being asset providers, which is I'll give you 200,000 vehicles, to mobility providers. Now, what does that mean from how they talk about the service, to what does that mean to the experience, to what does that mean to the market as well? And so we did a couple of collabs too, because their offering was B2B, B2C, B2B2C. So we took each audience as a collab and we looked at what that future vision looks like. Again, I think sometimes when you time box yourself and you got the right mix of people in the room and the right decision makers, you'll be surprised how good a hypothesis you can get to. So we built over those 3 collabs, we built what that future vision looks like in terms of the prototype and bring it to life into online and offline experiences. And again, we tested it with employers, employees, and that whole strategy was kind of then presented off to the stakeholders. It made it so much more tangible. What does it mean to be a mobilities provider? And so, again, that was the same approach. If I think about what really worked well, if I had to compare that to a 200-page document that was only showcased to the higher stakeholders and wasn't co-created from the bottom up, that would take longer to cascade down to the BDM or the person talking to the customer service team, for example, as well. The fact that we helped bring all of these people to co-create that vision, you already had those champions of change within the business that helped them move faster, move smarter, and then be able to kind of own that strategy and it was already shown to them how to make it execution ready. So it's, I think, like I said, good strategy should be something that everybody can see themselves in and how they're going to play a role in bringing that to life.
Yeah. So this is all really compelling, Shruti. I can see all the benefits, but I'm sure you also need some prerequisites in place to make this type of approach work. Yeah. What are the ingredients? What do you need in place in order to be able to deliver a strategy that's alive?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've done this approach for, like I said, the big end of town who've got sit on mountains of research that can be leveraged across versus startups. I think what we need is a good understanding of who your audiences are, what you want to achieve. I think sometimes our clients just need a little help to sort of define what the problem to solve is. We help them get there to sort of make sure that we're solving for the right problem there. And then I think making sure that we do have some pre-work done, because as partners, we're coming into that problem. You've lived in that problem space, so that we're sort of getting up to speed with that. But to be honest, the magic happens when we come in with a external point of view, but we're getting domain experts. We don't need to be an expert into your business, but we need to understand. We need to have those key ingredients in place. Understand the problem, understand the audience that we're solving for, the why, and then the domain experts within that.
Have the right people in the room.
Exactly. And again, we've had people come into this on day one of the co-creation session and going, what am I doing? Yeah. And in many complex organizations, there are people who've never met each other. It's the first time they're meeting each other and they're working with each other. And even that by itself creates that chemistry and that need that just, you get so much value at the end.
And the ownership of that outcome, I can imagine.
Absolutely. Because again, in a business, you need the legal team to work with you to get a new service out. You need the customer service team to make sure that they're putting you in your place. Most of us sit in ivory towers as the customer service teams who know exactly what the audience pain points are. So I think that's quite the magic sauce.
Okay, excellent. So let's get into some practical takeaways for the leader, maybe inside a big organization who is sitting on a months-long potential research project at the moment. What would you tell them to do instead?
I would take a step back and I would say, look at your last strategy document and ask yourself, was that dynamic? Did it hold true for forces that shifted since that document was created? Was it designable? And did the teams understand what the outcomes were intended from that document? And was it executable? I mean, from a principal point of view, strategy is supposed to give you a framework of choices. Was it successful in helping you make the right choices through that process? And if the answer is no, then you can frame it in a nice little frame as artwork, or you can kind of look at how do we make sure that we're not bolstering all of this into the process later on. So I think when you think research, you think I have to have absolutely every detail and every answer to every question needs to be perfect, needs to be so deep dived. But the question is, can you get to a good enough hypothesis to be able to start to think about how you execute and how you bring it to life, and then iterate and shape shift it as you go through? Most likely the answer is yes.
Okay. So yeah, if that realization's there and there's an openness to maybe approaching this next project differently, as you're a strategy partner to large organizations, what would your message be to clients in those big companies around how they should buy strategy differently, maybe in future?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this, and everyone's going AI, and we're going to design with AI, and when they think about AI and strategy, they're thinking about, oh, I can crunch these numbers, and I don't need a strategist. I think they need to ask if what they're really needing is someone to come in to solve problems. And when they're thinking about buying strategy, they're not buying a document, they're buying a way of bringing that solution to life. And how can they do it at the pace that their business needs it to be? And how can they do it in a way that they can bring all their team together rather than hand off something and say, now it's your problem to execute?
Yeah, so I think this for me, this theme of ownership and momentum has come through conversation, and that's
absolutely
great what you're talking about.
Momentum, confidence in decision making.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty key. Well,
bringing our conversation to a close and looking forward, lots to talk about AI at the moment in design. I know you're more interested, even though you're a designer by background, you're more interested in how we use AI in strategy development. What does that mean to you, and where do you see things going at GHO?
Yeah, we've been asking this question to ourselves for a while now. When we had, Figma, for example, was a turning point. I know a lot of people saw it as a turning point for design. I saw it as a turning point for strategy, because our collabs could, like I said, bring an alive strategy to the table, because it wasn't just a deck, it was a prototype. So now, as AI is people are asking about what does AI do to design, I'm asking the question, what does AI do to strategy? I think the literal answer is, now I can go from here's our thinking to here's our hypothesis to here's how we make it to here's how we build it. The promise now is to go from thinking to a built environment to then pilot it to a set of customers really quickly. That's the basic promise. But I guess we're trying to explore what does it mean one step further. I think, like, going back to the start of this conversation where we talked about the richness of information that goes into developing these strategies sometimes. For example, when we do brand strategy, there are businesses who haven't looked at their brand as such for about 10 plus years. And so it's almost reintroducing themselves to who they are as a business. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of valuable conversations in there. How do we operationalize that in a way that's dynamic and executionable, no matter who's picking it up, no matter whether that's, 3 years after the strategy project has finished? How do you make that an alive piece in the organization? That's kind of where GHO is kind of moving and kind of thinking about strategy going forward.
Thanks, Shruti. Excited to see where things go at GHO in the work that you do, and really appreciate the conversation today, talking about how do we make strategy alive. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
And hopefully we never have to buy a dead fish strategy again.
Want access to the best specialist marketing and digital services? Check out Studio Space, the agency marketplace and procurement solution that gives big brands a faster, simpler, and more flexible way to access the most extraordinary agencies.